What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be trying out something a little bit different. I'm actually going to be doing a product review for this head that was sent to me by the Good Stick Co. And it's actually going to be my first product review, so I'm sorry if it's not the best quality, but hey, thought I would get this out there. They were really kind and nice enough to be able to send me a head for me to try out and for me to use. And honestly, I had a great time just getting out there and doing a review, taking some shots, and doing some cool shots like as you can see here for the product itself. So hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get right into it. And actually, before we do that, for anyone that was curious of what shaft I was using, it was an STX SCTI. Awesome shaft. I absolutely loved it. Feels great. Please don't judge me for putting tape on the setup. I know that's obviously super dust, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes, okay? So just relax. The first thing I always like to talk about whenever I'm using a new head or anything that is new for me is the feel, okay? Now, what does that mean? It means when you pick the stick up, okay, how does it feel in your hands? On a scale from 1 to 10, how good does it feel? Does it feel right to you as a lacrosse player when you're cradling the ball? What does that feel like? Does it feel like it's too heavy? It's too light? What's the deal, right? So it's going to be very subjective for each guy and what feels good to them and what doesn't feel good to them. For me, the Good Stick Co. felt good. So to me, obviously, it's a very good first impression. When I pick up the stick, it doesn't feel like I'm picking up some kind of weird, wacky object that feels unfamiliar to me. This felt familiar. And if you actually look at the head setup itself, it looks and is very similar to that of the Reebok 10K, which is an older head that is obviously discontinued by Reebok because they no longer make lacrosse stuff. But regardless, it felt familiar and I enjoyed it. Here's a little clip of me talking about feel while taking some shots.
You know, my big thing for whenever I'm using a lacrosse stick, it's all about feel for me. And what I mean by feel is, and that's completely subjective and dependent on who the person is, because what feels right for me might be different for somebody else. But what I mean by feel is just, you pick up the stick, does it feel good? Does it feel right? You'll know as soon as you pick up a stick or you start using a setup if it feels good to you, right? And my first impressions from the Good Stick Co. is when I have this head on my shaft here, which is an STX SCTI 0, right? The setup feels good. It feels really nice and light. It feels balanced. As a lacrosse player, I don't think there's much more you can ask for.
The other thing is the shape of the head itself feels and looks very similar to the Brine clutch as well, which is what I used to use constantly throughout my childhood. I love the clutch. So again, I think that really kind of contributed to the feel and me liking it so much right off the bat. So I got to give it like an 8 out of 10. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is stringing options available for whoever is stringing this stick. And let me tell you, there's a lot. There's 23 sidewall holes on this head, so you're going to have lots of options as a stringer to be able to get the setup that you want and not be limited to the amount of holes that are in the head itself. So as a stringer, I personally love that. I've been using the same string job for almost 10 years now probably. So when you have those options available to you, you can always just fine tune and tweak it to make it exactly the way you want. And with that said, I'll give it another 8 out of 10. Hey, it's you got lots of options as a stringer. It's not perfect, but I still like it. Now we're going to move on to my favorite part of the video, which is slow motion videos of me absolutely shredding twine. Just kidding, I'm not actually that narcissistic, but I really did enjoy going to the field and just shooting around with this head. Honestly, guys, there's nothing better than going to the field on a super bright, sunny day, not too hot, not too cold, and just getting some shots in. So I went into the shooting session completely blind, hadn't even tested out the head in terms of how it felt when I shot, which can be extremely difficult sometimes because, it's not always going to be the exact same release if you're not using the same head with the same string job. So with all that said, I figured it out pretty quick. And here's a little clip of me just talking through that.
To be honest, this is my first time really having like a shooting session with this, and honestly, it's not bad. I definitely have to get used to the release a little bit, just because my normal string job here, I don't think it really suited the head well, so I just have to adjust a little bit probably to be able to really get the release I want. But after the first few shots I took, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for it's not the wand, it's the wizard, right? So after you take a few shots with whatever stick you're using, you should be able to adjust your release to the point that you're comfortable with it. So, I mean, it's not the release I would typically go with. Like, it shoots a little bit down. It's a little whippier than I would normally like. However, snap the wrist a little bit more, and you should be able to shoot with any stick. Just depends on where you're releasing it, how you're releasing it, and then yeah, the rest will kind of follow, if that makes sense.
Now, with all this said, for the overall performance of the head itself while I was shooting, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. And the reason why it might be a little bit lower in this category is just because I did notice that when I was scooping up GBs and kind of shooting around, the head is a little bit flimsy. And what I mean by that is that, like, when you try to actually pinch the head together or like go scoop up a GB, the head bends super easily, which means that it's probably going to have a tendency to warp, which, in really hot conditions, if you're playing in the summer, you're playing box or you're playing field lacrosse, that can be super frustrating, because a warped head, to me, is not the best setup that you want. Like, as soon as my heads warp, I try to get a new one, just because I find it affects my release, it affects the way I pass, and so on and so forth. So I think 6.5 out of 10 is generous. This is a super cool company. The Good Stick Co. was created to drastically reduce the import costs for people that are in, the Czech Republic and need to get lacrosse gear. So as a head for its use and for the purpose of the company, I think it's an awesome head. If we tally up the scores, we'll get a grand total of a 7.5 out of 10. I think this would be great for beginners to intermediate players that are maybe newer to the game and still trying to get a feel for how things work in terms of, what lacrosse is and how to play and all that stuff, at a really awesome price point. So with all that said, the Good Stick Co., awesome brand. I would recommend it to, beginner to intermediate players that are still getting a feel for their game. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video.